while everyone's getting seated, let me tell you a little bit about why we're here and what the panel's about. What we're going to start off the panel with, you're going to see a 15-minute clip of a documentary that is coming out now. It's actually been shown at some film festivals, and we've had some screenings, and you'll start to see it more and more, especially after like July. You'll see a lot of it. It's called Right to Harm, and it's kind of unique in that we've seen a lot of movies about animal production facilities and the welfare of the animals and various segments. This is the first documentary, I think, which actually talks about the impacts on the human beings that live near industrial meat production or egg production. And one thing that I want to add to this is that it's not just necessarily the buildings. When you talk about CAFOs and the problems associated with them, there is a mass infrastructure that goes with it. And this is what we were just talking about in the other room. Because not only do you have the facilities, but then you have the waste. So you have to get rid of the waste. So you have composting, you have spray fields, you have all kinds of manure to energy receiving. So there is a lot of different issues. And what happens, because it's more economical, obviously, for the industry to set up this way, everything is close by. That's and it's usually in an area where there's little political power. Mm-hmm. And these folks are really getting impacted, and that was one of my concerns when we're talking about the renewables. We need to be really careful at what we're classifying as renewables. Everybody loves wind and solar, right? I mean, nobody would argue against that, but we have to be very careful that we're not opening the door to other things that may be more polluting. So with that, I'm just going to start rolling this, and we will get to our panel and our speakers after in the introductions. Enjoy.
On the one side, it tells you every item you will need to take out for water monitoring. Name, address, phone number, township, and section number for each facility that you're going to sample. Okay, hold your bottle up here, and you're going to match it to whichever one it's closest to.
What do you guys think?
Most likely that. It's still got a little bit of purple to it.
This is what I found in every single community.
What is he testing for right now? Ammonia. Ammonia.
And every community asked me this question.
Okay, so they're within limit.
How can we beat this? What are our chances of beating it?
The folks that are on the ground, you're the eyes and ears to protect, your neighbors, your waterways, everything.
It's your voice and your community that will be the determination of what happens here.
So say this, it's so simple.
Here's just a group of citizens trying to live their life, being impacted now all of a sudden by this massive problem that they know is going to be life-changing to their communities. So here's Sam Burley's house. Poultry has been around for decades and decades on the Eastern Shore. Now here comes the odors. Now all of a sudden, we're seeing where industry is literally changing its model. Who's gonna buy this house? Who would ever buy this house? Now they're putting 600-foot poultry confinement houses, edge to edge on the property. They're calling them no-land farms. There, again, economic development, right? Economic development. Here, you can't smell without getting sick. Throat burning, you get the eyes burning, you get asthma triggers, rashes, sour smell of mortality. That's dead poultry that you're smelling. This is how you become a victim. For years, this was my life. These things destroy lives. They destroy families. My husband, the long-term health effects, he's still got. We are at my old house. There's the feedlot, and there's 4 houses behind the big barn. I still have a house that I can't sell, that I'm paying taxes on. see this? I had somebody come in and paint. The light must be burned out. Things started happening, rashes all the time. This was our dream home. This is where we were gonna be. Michael, he would get off the school bus and he would vomit because the stench was so bad. When he took a bath, he came out and immediately his body started blistering. We took him to the doctor and the doctor said, I need to do a test to see if he has cancer. Well, nothing shakes a mother's world like that. And that was it. That was the day I said, gone, 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 gone. We're gone. And we left.
One day you see a beautiful cornfield, and the next day you got 10 poultry houses. And like, where was my opportunity to participate and whether or not I want that in my community?
People's health is being jeopardized because of the exposures. It's, science doesn't lie.
You have the particularization from the chicken litter. When it becomes windblown, if you breathe it in, you will have some of the same health effects. Heart disease, asthma, bronchitis, lung cancer. The problem is the EPA and state agencies and local agencies are not regulating emissions. Why have they allowed this industry to not be covered by the Clean Air Act? We should make sure before you build another chicken farm, you actually have baseline data on levels of ammonia, hydrogen sulfide, VOCs, particulate matter, before you build those farms. You need to make sure you do your health impact assessment. They need to be required to do that. Sewage treatment plants, they emit some of the same gases, and we cover them by the Clean Air Act, but we're not covering these same gases that have been emitted from these farms, which are industrial level emissions. There are many public health impacts from chicken CAFOs. So if you think about the facilities themselves, you have the litter. When you have waste and it's breaking down, you have ammonia and hydrogen sulfide. That stinky smell is just not the stink that you're smelling. You're smelling these compounds that can irritate your eyes, nose, and your throat. It can cause chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, COPD. It can lead to anger, it can lead to fatigue. Some studies have shown that exposure to these types of pollutants can impact immune functioning. These facilities, they impact the health of your community. They basically kill communities. Why are you bringing us a chicken farm? What else is out there that would bring in economic development where we can maximize the benefits and minimize the impacts? Why are you always bringing crap stuff to our community? That is a form of environmental injustice. I would dare say that this is environmental racism.
I always knew about environmental justice, but I never knew environmental justice till I met Dr. Jacoby Wilson.
Who are the people most impacted? Poor folks, people of color. If you look at a lot of the chicken farming to a certain extent in Maryland and also industrial hog farming in North Carolina, you see a disproportionate number of these facilities in communities that are primarily low income and primarily people of color communities. In North Carolina, you have a huge issue with industrial animal operations. If you think about the hog industry, you have a lagoon system where they basically collect the manure and liquid waste in these lagoons, and then they spray it onto fields. Many of those folks who are being impacted, they're Black folk, they're Latinos, they're poor people. Many of the same counties that produce most of the hogs, they're also the counties that had a lot of slaves. There's this connection between slavery and the devaluation of people and how we're doing it the same way. This is environmental slavery.
My grandfather that purchased this land was my mother's father. He was born and raised on this land. This over here's my sister's land. This is separate from the land over here. And this, my nephew stays here, and as you can see, the spray field is right in front of his door. My great uncles and great aunts and, cousins and all that, they all walked on this land, and that means something to me. This land connects me with my family that I didn't know. You see here from this angle, you can see in there real good. You can see the sprayers. We've been living under the gun from that spray field and the smell and stench from the hog houses in the lagoon ever since 1986. I remember vividly the first time he sprayed on us. It was on a Saturday. We were all sitting on the front porch here, and he brought the gun out, and in a short time, we heard this bursting sound. Then all of a sudden, the mist was coming over from the sprayer. Where do you go in this world where people blow animal waste on another person? That's something I still cannot wrap my mind around. Why would you feel like you have a right to blow animal waste on me? It takes your breath away. You get a headache, you feel like you want to throw up. You get angry, you get depressed. I knew what they were doing and I knew it was wrong, and I just wasn't going to stand for it. We just keep trying to bring it to the attention of those people who are in these positions that are supposed to make decisions, waiting for them to do the right thing. We've been shut out. We've just been shut out.
Elsie Harriman is one of 500 citizens in eastern North Carolina that's a part of the nuisance lawsuit against Murphy Brown. The lawsuit is in hopes that people can regain some kind of monetary value for all of these losses. But if you ask me, no amount of dollars can give you back good health. We took 22 people from the communities up to DC along with the lawyers. We went to Congress and encouraged them to do their job and encouraged them to come to North Carolina. We didn't leave no doubt on their minds when we left that room about who we are and that we gonna say what we got to say. We've been fighting this issue for about 3 decades in North Carolina. So it's old and long, and you see why that people are tired.
Even though they say and talk a good talk, will they walk the walk? That remains to be seen.
We pay their taxes, we pay their salaries. You cannot abandon this project.
The hog industry in eastern North Carolina began in the early 80s. Then next thing we know, it's 10 million of these animals in North Carolina. With the majority of them being in predominantly African American, Native American, and Latino communities, we feel like that was no mistake. We call those the avenues of least resistance. In 1997, there was a moratorium passed in North Carolina to prevent the proliferation of the industry. And in 2007, there was a chance that it wouldn't be renewed. We decided, okay, we'll hold a 51-hour vigil at the state capitol. We decided to set up a mock hog farm, and we trucked in 40 gallons of hog waste. The facilities manager came over and wanted to know what we were doing. He said, y'all spill one drop, we're gonna call in hazmat, cause it's toxic waste. We was like, toxic waste, really? Well, we thought when we loaded it on the truck, it was organic fertilizer. At least that's what they tell the community. You don't want this crap in your backyard. Why do you think we want it?
We come today to say goodbye to one who held us close. I don't think anybody in the world could ever say that Steve Wing was a man who visited the earth. His commitment to his family, his commitment to social justice, his passion for his work and for the truth that rode his life, and that he rode like a horse all of his life.
Dr. Steve Wing from the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, he was researching on this industrial agriculture and what it could mean to people.
We took a trailer full of air pollution monitors to 16 neighborhoods where people lived within a mile and a half of between 1 and 16 industrial hog operations. Levels of gases and particles recorded by the pollution monitors were related to respiratory symptoms, lung function, stress and anxiety, and residents' ability to engage in daily routine activities.
The communities loved him because he was so respectful and he was humble.
And I thought about Steve would always say, Naeema, come on, let's go make some trouble. And I would say, okay, Steve, let's go.
And we were the troublemakers. That was my buddy. I want to get in trouble. Steve, come on, let's go.
What everybody else called trouble, Steve and I called it justice. So it's...
So, let me close the light, sorry. Let me just give you a lot of the panels coming up. Chris. Come on up. So, I'm gonna give you a little bit of a background. The film, the folks who filmed it, it's a young married couple. It's Annie Spiker and Matt Wessler. They're from Hourglass Films. And there's actually a website. If you go to Right to Harm, it's an interactive website. And it will provide a lot of educational knowledge about the issue, and interactive maps coming on, stories are coming on from various communities. As you can see, it doesn't matter if it's North Carolina, if it's Delaware, if it's Pennsylvania, you name it.
Don't leave out mine.
In Maryland, I don't know if you've been reading on that nonsense. This is a huge fight that we have, and it's very politicized, and you have to be very organized. And there's a young lady in the room now that called me a couple weeks ago about an operation in Virginia that by the Shenandoah Valley. Catherine just popped up out of the blue, and now we find out there's 5 operations coming in there, and one of them they're locating directly across the street from an autistic school, school for autistic children.
And the sheriff owns it.
And the sheriff owns it. It's a half mile from his house.
What a surprise, right?
So, right, what a surprise, right? So let me just real quick go through the panel and a little bit about, so Carole Morison is going to be here. Carole Morison, for those of you who know, originates from Maryland. Actually, she was born in Delaware and married into Maryland, but had poultry houses that she contracted with for Purdue for 24 years. Food Incorporated, anybody remember that movie when it first came out 10 years ago? Yeah. Carole Morison was the first one to actually address the issues. It's hard for folks in contract to talk about this because they are often punished for financially. So let's start from, so Carole's not here. I'm gonna introduce you to Chris Nidell, and there's a specific reason. Chris Nidell is with NACE, Nidell and NACE, I'm sorry, you almost screwed that up, in Washington, right? Is that where your offices are now?
Correct.
DC? And Chris is actually an attorney. We have a whole bunch of nuisance suits going on in North Carolina with Naeema and Elsie. I don't know where Devon was. Devon's here somewhere in the conference. And there is in Delaware, I don't know how many are familiar with Mount Air Farms, have been following that for the past couple of years. with the processing plants and the spray fields. Gina and Donna and James, they all live on Herbrook Lane, but there are hundreds and hundreds of people impacted. So this is something that's real in every community. It's usually in an area where people cannot fight it. So let's move down. Gina is a community advocate. She is fighting for clean air and clean water. She has been, how many conferences have we done, Gina? How many shed meetings, Sussex Health and Environmental Network? How many? It's been a lot of them. Next to Gina is Elsie Herring. Elsie is a community advocate from Duplin County, North Carolina. And
Duplin County.
Duplin County, North Carolina. That's what we saw in the film, and we were also talking in the other room before this about that. Naeema Muhammad is co-director of the North Carolina Environmental Justice Network. They will be having their network annual meeting for EJ the third
weekend
in October for anyone interested. And so I guess we went through there. So what I'm gonna do is, Chris, I'm gonna let you kind of set up a little bit of the text just about what's happening on the legal side, and then just go down the panel and let everybody for 5 minutes, go 5 to 8 minutes about, what you're dealing with, what's changed, what has been the challenges.
So I did not know I was gonna be on a panel, but I'm happy to be on a panel. So I got involved in ag issues years ago, and we actually met. We met with Steve Wing a while ago. And I didn't know they had this thing for Steve Wing, but Steve Wing was incredible.
Yeah.
But so I worked with Steve Wing and Rob Hale on sewage sludge issues originally. I think I started getting involved in sewage sludge because I was a lawyer at a small law firm, and somebody called and said we're getting shit on, and I thought, well, as a lawyer, like what am I supposed to be able to do if not help people that are getting shit on? Like that to me was like why you become a lawyer. And if you can't do anything, then the system needs to be fixed, which it still needs to be fixed. But in any event, so I got involved in sewage sludge in Virginia, filed a case in Virginia, a nuisance case with pulmonary fibrosis and people that were injured, and was able to come away with what I would call a victory of some degree in that case. We've had sewage sludge cases in Pennsylvania now, which I still have a case ongoing in Pennsylvania against Synagro. And I sort of moved from, well, I did the Purdue case, the Clean Water Act case that was in many ways on its face a loser, but we sued a Purdue farm and their local, quote unquote family farmer, but their employee with all his chicken houses that were polluting the local waterways. And since that, I've become involved in Gina's case and some other folks that are here's case out in Delaware, where we've got issues that not only involve nuisance from the spray fields, the kind of stuff that you're seeing in these videos, but also involve respiratory effects, health effects. We have people who have nitrate levels that are well above the federal MCLs, and so we have people that have birth defects that we think is from essentially these nitrates starve the body of oxygen. So they take away the blood's ability to carry oxygen to your extremities. So we have people who have had legs amputated and extremities amputated because they're effectively being starved of oxygen. So we have those real serious effects on top of, the fact that you have people that, Gina and her family and other folks who live really in the heart of what's going on, and they're surrounded by these operations. I mean, the first case I had, the sewage sludge case I had in Virginia, it was sewage sludge, but they were also bringing, I don't know if we ever talked about it, they were bringing hog lagoon waste, and they brought in 1.6 million gallons of this stuff right behind this woman's house and sprayed it over like a few days, right? So it was like, and I went through, and this was Synagro, and it was Smithfield Foods. It was one of their hog farms, and I went through and calculated at the time, and I don't remember exactly, but for the 1.6 million gallons, it was roughly a gallon of nitrate right, or nitrogen, right? So there was like a gallon of fertilizer and 1.6 million gallons of blood, guts, and other who knows what, right? That they sprayed right behind this woman's house. And the way they did sewage sludge in Virginia in this instance, they cut rows in the trees of the forest and they'd fling manure, human waste, onto the trees, 30 feet high in the air, caked 6 inches on the trees. And they did this with the hog waste as well. I mean, it was the craziest thing. And if you looked at the aerial photos, you could see all the stuff was running into the James River. I mean, it was, you know, it's not just a human health issue, it's an environment issue, and those obviously interact. So anyway, so I've been dealing with those issues. I've been dealing in Pennsylvania with Right to Farm Act issues, which are big issues. Right now, Pennsylvania has a Right to Farm Act that essentially says you can't sue a farm once they've been in operation for more than a year, period. So a farmer can, you know, literally buy 10 chicks at the farm supply shop and say, I'm raising chickens, and then next year bring in 100,000 chickens with, you know, Purdue or Mount Air, and then claim, I've been doing this for, you know, 13 months now. There's no way you can sue me, and totally change the nature of the community, right? So this is something that I believe pretty strongly in. And I think that, you know, as Steve Wing said, as Dr. Wilson said, I mean, you know, I tend to see it as an economics issue. That often tends to be a race issue. There is an economic and race, you know, correlation, but, you know, I see it can be white people, it can be Hispanic people, it can be black people. It impacts people that are not connected, that don't have the resources. You know, you go into a neighborhood and you can find them in Pennsylvania, you can find them in Virginia with new houses, big lots, money, connections to politicians, and those are not the areas where this is happening, right? And
Not Bethesda, right, Bob?
and when they make the mistake of doing it, they stop and they move on quickly, right? When they find out, oh my goodness, this guy's cousin is friends with the governor, like, they're gone. They know better than that. But when they have poor people that are hard to organize, that have too many things that they need to worry about, that they feel that they can't address some of these things, and they don't have connections to lawyers and politicians, they get run over. And I guess that's why they need lawyers. So with that, I'll stop talking.
Okay, so hello everybody. I'm Naeema Muhammad, co-director, community organizer for the North Carolina Environmental Justice Network. And since '99, I have been working with communities in North Carolina. We work with the North Carolina Environmental Justice Network, work across the state with communities that are fighting environmental hazards, either they're already there or trying to prevent them from coming, and more so working to change the conditions that already exist in our communities from all of this, what we call environmental dumping. And we always say whatever white people don't want in their backyard, you can find it in eastern North Carolina, and which is predominantly the poorest part of the state, and it's where mostly African American, Latino, and Native American communities are. So whether you're talking about coal ash, if we're talking about sewage sludge, CAFOs, poultry, Gen X, you name it, it's there in eastern North Carolina. We call it the avenue of least resistance. It's where people have the least amount of economic and political clout that fight off these industries. And so they run rampant in eastern North Carolina. And we have local governments that give them permission. Then we have state government that give them permission. We have state legislators that give them more permission. And so it's like just across the state, nobody cares what's happening. And so, we have to organize and, empower people to speak on their own behalf to be able to try to change the conditions that exist. And so we've been fighting with the pork industry for nearly 3 decades in North Carolina. And it's been a hell of a fight, I tell you that. But I tell everybody I probably had more fun than anybody. You know, because what I enjoy the most in working, doing environmental work, working with communities, when a community call us and say we need help, we go and meet with the community, and I hear people say, well, we can't do nothing about it, or we can't change it, or it's their property, so they have a right. No, they don't have a right to do anything on their property that keeps you from enjoying your property. That is a false right, and you know, so they do not have that right. And the only reason they enjoying it is because we haven't done anything about it. So now, you know, what do we do to change this? And then the industries come in and start saying those environmentalists, they just want to put people out of business, you know. And we're saying, no, we don't want to put anybody. You have never heard us say we want to put you out of business. We say clean up your mess. That's what we want. We want people to be able to breathe, be able to go outside any time of their choosing, not feeling like prisoners in their own homes, not feeling like they have to negotiate with the air, being able to use their clotheslines. You know, if I wash my clothes, I can hang them out. Doesn't cost me nothing but my time. You know, but now people have to buy washers and dryers or go to a laundromat, which is costly. And especially these laundromats these days, I don't know if anybody been to a laundromat lately. Last time I went in, they had one machine, $7.25. I was like, what the hell? You know, I couldn't believe it. And that was the top price. I think the lowest price was about $4.25. Who can afford that? You know, we were talking about low-income communities where most people are on fixed incomes or low wage jobs. They cannot afford these extra fees that they're being taxed with because these industries want to do their business, you know, in our communities. And then you have, you know, people again can't go outside anytime they want. So now you got to buy air conditioners, whereas you could have just opened your doors and windows. And then you're forced to stay inside. You don't see children playing outside in these communities. I know as I ride through, going to visit, going to see people, going to meetings, the thing that's always been striking to me, I grew up in Rocky Mount, North Carolina. We lived outside. We lived outside from sun up to almost sun up again, you know, because our parents did that. Because I grew up in a day when people didn't have to worry about their children. And so our parents could go to bed and leave us outside. And we didn't have no more sense than to try to stay out there till the sun came up again. So you know, so we lived outside. But that's what children do. But I'm telling you, I go through these communities, you do not see children playing outside. That is highly unusual. And I was like, you know something is wrong when you don't see a child outside playing. And, you know, so those are the kinds of things that people have to deal with. And so as I began doing the organizing, the first thing was to get people informed. And I always say to people, when you see people doing nothing, it's not because they don't care. It's not because they don't want to. Most times it's because they don't know what to do. And they don't know why they need to do it. So, you know, a part of our job is to get people informed, empower people with information that they can use to speak on their own behalf. And that's what Christina in the room here, and Dr. Steve Wing that you saw on the video, Shakovi Wilson, Dr. Shakovi Wilson, you know, these are our allies from North. They hail from North Carolina, even though y'all have them up here in Maryland now. We trained them. Yeah.
That's so funny. Dr. Wing did test when I lived in Pennsylvania. They were trying to put a hog farm, right? Gemmels, remember?
Yeah.
right by, and park the school buses. He had school bus contracts. Park them all right next to the facility, like downwind. And, you know, all of the antibiotic resistance and the fumes and everything else that would be coming would be, you know, you guys did the study from the Center for Liver Hopkins, Bloomberg, where you follow behind. And we actually had Jillian Fry and Ronnie Neff from Hopkins, Bloomberg School of Public Health. Dr. Wing said in testimony, true story, when we went in front of the school board, true story, they would not let Johns Hopkins University speak because they didn't live in the community. And this was all prearranged. This is the politics you're dealing with. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interject.
That's all right. Y'all remember she took some of my minutes, right?
I'm sorry.
That's all right. Anyway, so to make a long story short, over these nearly 3 decades of work that we've been doing, working with communities, organizing the communities, there's been a lot of research done with Chris Heaney, Dr. Shelby Wilson, and Dr. Steve Wing. And I say doctors, but let me just stop, okay? Because that bothers me, because I just know him as Chris, Steve, and Jacoby, period. And not to take away from all the hard work they did to get to where they are, but Steve would have been the first one to say, I'm just Steve, don't call me no doctor. I'm just Steve. He hated it, you know, for you to keep referring to him as Dr. Steve Wing. So we just always said Steve. Everywhere he went, whenever he got introduced as Steve Wing from the University of North Carolina School of Public Health, renowned researcher, you know, and a true believer that research is not the answer, but community organizing is the answer, you know. And the research is a tool used to empower communities to do the work that they do and to speak on their own behalf. It is not the answer to what is happening in the community. And so, you know, we have to I always keep that in mind when I'm doing, you know, the work, when I'm working with folks, is that's not the answer. It's like we had some kick butt lawyers in North Carolina that work with the North Carolina Environmental Justice Network. But their line is, but the legal strategy is just a strategy. It is not the answer. If we don't have the people's voice, the legal battle won't make no difference. You go into court and you don't have nobody there, it won't matter. It doesn't change a thing. So we always keep community organizing in front of everything that we do in North Carolina, because that's where your power is. That's where you're going to be able to change the system and change the conditions that exist, is to have the people's voices there and the people show up and show out. And so that's what we work to do, is to keep the people in the forefront. And I'm going to be quiet, and I could tell a whole lot more, but I always get trapped in my own
We have 25
stories.
minutes, I'm sorry, so I'm gonna let Elsie go and Gina go and then open it up for some questions, because I know we have
And if you
people
want to
that are
hear
playing.
more, you have to come to the Environmental Justice Summit, October 18th and
There you go.
19th. How about that?
So Elsie, I'm gonna let you go next.
My name is Elsie Herring, and I live in Duplin County. I was born and raised there. I live on land that's been in my family for over 100 years. My mother's father purchased the first of his 4 tracts of land in 1891. 1897, he purchased 3 more tracts, a total of roughly 70 acres of land. And in 1986, a hog operation moved in onto my family's land. The people that were involved in making this become a reality went into the Registry of Deeds office, and they changed my grandfather's will, his map, and his deeds. Then they came out to the home place and took the physical land. They built 2 hog houses and a lagoon, which is located on my family's land, a 3rd mile from my mother's house, which is the house that I now live in. And the spray field is 8 feet from my mother's house. And that's where they started blowing animal waste on us. It would come over on us just like it was raining. So when I realized what was happening, this began spraying on us in the mid-90s. I started complaining about it. I made trips, I made phone calls, I wrote letters. I started with our local government. I went up to the federal level of our government, and no one would address this issue. they felt like there was nothing wrong with the industry because they were following the guidelines that were put in place, but they were not, because no one should and have the right to blow animal waste on another human being. But that's what they were doing to my family. And when I started reaching out to the legislators that would help me, my local representative, who was Cindy Watson, and they spent millions of dollars to get her out of office. She took me around to other farms where people were having issues, but they seemed to not have had a voice to speak up about it. So when I realized that there were other people impacted, like my mother, who lived on this land for 99 years, she died in the year 2001. And I had a Down syndrome brother who lived on this land for 60 years. They couldn't fight for themselves. So that being my main motivation, and then seeing all these other people who didn't know how to fight because they didn't know what they were fighting. Because you see, when this industry first came into North Carolina, these hog facilities were hidden. They were all behind trees, out of sight, out of mind. People were smelling them, but they didn't know what they were smelling. Now, I can assure you, most of these people, like myself, we grew up where we had hog pens in our backyard. But it wasn't a heavy concentration, so the odor wasn't as foul. And they certainly were not blowing the animal waste into the air, and the wind taking it and traveling and impacting people's lives. So it was at that point in time in our lives that we became prisoners in our own homes, living on our own land, with the hog operations also on our land. So when Cindy introduced me to these people and they were able to relax a little bit and listen to what we had to say, and we told them that what you're smelling is these ginormous hog farms. You can't see them, but you can smell them. And people were surprised that that's what that smell was coming from, because it was in such a large concentration that they were not able to recognize that that was animal waste, because growing them on the ground in your regular pen, occasionally you would get a swift, but nothing that would really slap you in your face. But with these CAFOs, when they've got thousands of pigs in one hog house, that's a lot. And most often, you don't find one, you'll find, in my family's case, you found two, but you go to other areas, you may find 10 to 12 of these facilities, 10 to 12 chicken CAFOs in the same communities. And in some of these communities, you'll also find landfills. Well, that's too much pollution for anyone to have to deal with. But these are what we have to deal with in people of color, because that is where most of these facilities are located. They're primarily located in people of color, low-income communities. And we don't have money, we don't have voice, so we don't get the kind of representation that we need to fight these issues. So in I think it was around 2000, I met Naeema Mohammed. I was familiar with the network before I met Naeema, but I've been with Naeema since 2000. I'm pretty sure someplace in that area. And I became a community organizer working with the network. And we were able to really mobilize and then go into communities, Duplin County, Sampson, Pender, Bladen, and educate people, give them the information that they need so they could empower themselves to speak out, because it's impacting us. We're the ones that have to speak out to show that we're tired of this and we're not going to shut up anymore. We're going to raise our voices until you know that we mean business. We're not going to allow you to continue to blow animal waste on us, hold us prisoners in our homes, and as Naeema said, all these other hardships that they placed on us by not allowing us to use our clotheslines anymore. They're able to open up our windows and let the fresh air come in, or go sit out under a tree. Drink water from our wells. Most people had shallow wells, so you didn't dare drink that water because the water table, it had to be contaminated. And those kind of hardships. And then we had to deal with all these mosquitoes and flies and buzzards. And then all the ammonia that's released into the atmosphere, and the hydrogen sulfide and the CO2. All of these things, you have to deal with buzzards, landing on top of your house or in your yard. Rats, snakes. And people have asked me why about snakes? Well, whenever you have these our animal operations, you have all this feed, you have mice. And where you have mice, you have snakes. And these are poisonous snakes that we're talking about. I have pictured so many of them because we had such an influx of snakes around my family's house one time that we were almost petrified just to step outdoors. But these are some of the outgrowths that come from having to deal with this. Not only is it blowing on you, but you have to breathe this in. And it's a terrible odor, and it's overwhelming when you have to breathe it in because you have to breathe, because that's part of life. They've taken away our water, they've taken away our clean air, and the food that we eat when we're eating this meat is not healthy. Pigs don't sweat. They shoot them full of these growth hormones, antibiotics, and all this does not leave out of their body. So when we eat this meat, we're eating that. And I think that might be a reason too why so many people are sick that live in these communities. And I was told by a couple of people that the majority of the people that were going up to Duke Hospital were people that were living near these facilities. Duke came out with a report a couple of months back saying that people who live within these zip codes were more prone to these health issues than those that were living outside of these zip codes. And we know who live outside these zip codes as well as we do know who's living inside these zip codes. So when we think about environmental racism, it's very much alive and it's very much in our communities, just like it was in our ancestors. They also had to take what was given to them with no representation and no voice. And we're still facing now with the same issue. So when we got people to understand what was happening, we got them to organize, we were able to get some lawyers to represent us in the nuisance lawsuit. There were 2 lawsuits that were going on. The nuisance lawsuit and the Title VI lawsuit, which was no financial compensation. The nuisance lawsuits are you get financial compensation. So the industry didn't like that we had organized and were able to find lawyers to represent us. So when the arguments were going on with the plaintiff's lawyer and the lawyer from the pork industry, our lawyers won out. The judge ruled these cases could go forward. So what did the industry do? They wrote laws that would limit the amount of financial compensation that we could receive from these lawsuits. House Bill 467. And less than a year later, the Senate introduced a bill, SB 711, which made it impossible for us to sue at all. Because in order to sue, DEQ has to come out and investigate within a year. And if they don't come out within that year to investigate, then you have to start the whole procedure all over again.
And then it becomes null and void because that year is that only window you really have.
Yeah.
Yes, so you have to make sure that DEQ comes out within that year so you can sue. But then they cut the funding for the inspectors. So they're not gonna come out within that year. So then your hands are still tied. And I'll close by just saying, at this point in time, 5 cases have gone to trial. There's more than one person in these cases, and we've won all 5. And 56 jurors that do not live in these impacted communities have found that the industry is indeed a bad neighbor.
And so what the verdict shows clearly states is that these jurors have said, okay, Smithfield, we heard the problem, we've heard, the testimony. We believe that you could have done different, you chose not to do different, so then you're gonna pay up. And and so they are pissed off, they are highly pissed off right now, so they've been pitting the growers, the contract growers against their neighbors by telling them that the environmentalists are trying to put them out of business. Yep. And those contract growers, we've been saying to them forever, we recognize that you're in a catch-22. In other words, you're in no better shape than the community is in. And we recognize that we just don't catch why you don't get it. Why you keep buying these lives from this industry. I mean, you live in the results of doing business with them, where you barely making enough to make your ends meet, but everything you own is tied up into this property.
And at
Right.
this
In
point,
the,
Anyway.
in the interest of time, I'm
Yeah,
sorry, we only have.
let me just say that we've won $500 million in punitive damages and compensatory damages at this point. There's more cases to be heard.
Yeah, and you'll see the similarities, right? You see it state by state. I just heard the year thing that popped up. Missouri is stripping out local control of their ordinances. It took me 10 years to pass a health ordinance in Pennsylvania based on those ordinances. Now I see the Attorney General writing letters, they're trying to strip that out in Pennsylvania.
Different states, yeah.
They all work together federally.
Yes, they do.
Gina, I'm sorry, let's move on to Gina because we only have a couple minutes left. I wanna make sure that we at least get contact information changed and Gina gets out her story.
Okay, I'm Gina Burton, my family from Sussex County. Before I start talking about the CAFOs, I'm in a county of, it's only like 1,000 miles long, population of 225,000, but we had 10 gas companies, 2 electric utility companies, a nylon plant, 9 waste stations, 15 coal ash plants, crop dusters. We have 5 compost sites and 9 different poultry plants all in one county. My grandfather was the the first sharecropper in Sussex County. Townsends Incorporated, now Mountaineer, obtained 40-some acres from him somehow, and he opened up Townsends. So my family lives with cornfield away from the processing plant, about a cornfield away from the processing plant. We grew up there our whole entire life. Back in the day, we stayed outside. You could play, spend your whole time outside. Come in, it was time for dinner. Now you cannot come outside. You can't put your windows up. So we're now just living off of center units. You can't enjoy the air. You can't enjoy the water. You can't cook with the water. So you got bugs. Bugs you don't know about. Bugs you haven't seen before. Mutations you haven't seen before. There was a time that I had moved and I moved down the road but came back. But now when I come over to my mother's house to stay, I bring extra bottles of water so I don't use up all her water just to brush my teeth. So I have just to brush my teeth because I'm not gonna brush my teeth with the water. It has a bad odor. I'm just scared to even be around the water. The little bit of period of time that I have moved away from there down the road to my father's house, since my father passed away and came back, the same intestinal issues that I had prior is back, and it became worse to the point where now that I have something that cannot be cured, it can be treated, but it can't be cured. Back to what Dr. Jacoby Wilson said and Chris Nodell said about oxygen to the brain. When my son was younger and first started elementary school, he was diagnosed as mentally disabled, educationally mentally disabled, because he had asthma, which he didn't get a lot of oxygen to the brain. So he ended up in, special ed classes and everything. He ended up getting shots, allergy shots, 5 1 week, 3 the next week. He was on the strongest allergy medication you can take. Then he eventually died to his asthma back in 2014 at the age of 24. But like he said, lack of oxygen caused him to, my aunt, she lost both her legs due to lack of oxygen. But she also worked for Mountaineer, Townsend's, and she retired, which is now Mountaineer. But on top of the CAFOs, with all these other places, organizations that I talked about, we have a small population with all these corporations. For all these years, nobody once told the public anything. We don't have colleges holding events like this. We don't have people. We met Maria back in 2017. So we didn't know this all these years. We just go to the doctor with our illnesses, take the medication, and move on. But now that we know all this, it's somebody's job to speak up, be a voice for the community, even if they don't realize it. Most of the people, I put stuff on Facebook, a lot of people don't respond because, they're saying, even if they have money or they poor, some of them do respond, some of them don't, but we need to find a way that we can put it out there. the question I was going to ask earlier is, can we find a Dr. Jacoby Wilson? Can we find a Dr. Masil? Can we find lawyers like Chris Nardell and Nace? Can we find activists like Maria and all, Naeema? Can we find them in Delaware?
We'll come help y'all. You let us know when you want to.
But my sister, she works for First State Community Action, and she's in charge of the senior citizen program for a lot of states in the United States. And it's hard to find volunteers to sit with the elderly. But you got so many people retiring from other states and moving to Sussex County, but they don't even know what they're facing.
Yes, right.
And then they start to get dementia and Alzheimer, and their families don't even come and assist them. My mom sits with a elderly gentleman now, and he has dementia. His family knows about it, but they have not took him back home or anything. So a lot of our senior citizens doesn't know what to do about this situation. Our kids don't know unless we fight for them. So somebody has to be the fight. So if my big mouth be the one for Sussex County to fight, I'm gonna come and speak every time I get a chance. Every time somebody fight me.
That's what you do then.
So we have, I'm sorry, just all hand here, We have a couple minutes left, so I want to get some questions. Go ahead.
My name is Omega Wilson, and this is my wife, Burton. We're from North Carolina. We were invited a few years ago by the Southeastern Rural Assistance Program to Rehoboth Beach, right? And some state officials invited us along with some community organizers to talk about how to address human lagoons. And they actually took us to places in Delaware, not too far from Rehoboth Beach, where there were human lagoons, where there were no sewage treatment facilities, right in the middle of the housing developments.
Yeah.
And you didn't add that to the list.
Well, be quick. Senator Tom Carpenter just got Ellendale, which is one of the lagoons, clean water, right?
Well, so that was interesting too. So we put a lot of pressure. I've been organizing for years. We have meetings monthly. We just got water equipment now to start, because you have to really do it yourself. There's no one out there, helping you with this. But we put pressure on. We wanted legislation, and Tom Carper, right before the election, passed the AWIA, which is the American Water Infrastructure Act, and it has an environmental justice component in it. But part of the thing is the governor has to be the one to actually request the money. So when we tried to have a meeting with the governor, they blockaded the meeting. Then we had to meet with the cabinet secretary first of DENREC, who wouldn't meet because there was active litigations in communities. So this is the struggle. You think you're gaining, and every little step is a struggle.
That's right.
Yes. Yeah, I did have a question. My name is Penny Dryden. I'm with the several organizations, Delaware Concerned Residents for Environmental Justice and the Delaware Environmental Justice Community Partnerships. And we're out of Wilmington, Delaware. Maria, we have worked on some things together. But Sussex County, Delaware is way different than Newcastle. Our issues are around the air and water pollution. But I share your pain. I mean, like talking brick walls with your elected officials, your government agencies, and everybody. They don't seem to understand or believe, I don't know which one it is, what we're saying to them. But I totally believe that working together, doesn't matter if you're in another state. Ms. Muhammad, I just met you, and guarantee we will be communicating.
I look forward to it.
But this community partnership thing has really taken hold. I was surprised that there were so many different groups fighting, but they're fighting in silence. There's no strength in that. Matter of fact, they use one against the other. So, hopefully, hearing from you today and continuing, that seems to be all we can do is continue our advocacy. But I look forward to trying to get to North Carolina and bring some folks with me to share. But I'm gonna ask this question. Through all this, you got compensation, I heard you say, are there still pollutions going on? Has anything
Yeah.
changed at all?
Yeah.
No,
Is
it's
everything just to say,
Well, that's the
So-
only thing that has changed is the nuisance lawsuits. We are winning those. But in the other areas, nothing has really changed. Except the fact that the industry made an agreement with the state in 2000 to phase out the spray fill and lagoon system. Fast forward to 2019 and all they're concentrating on is the biogas. They're building it as clean energy, renewable energy. Animal waste is filth, no matter how you look at it. But they'll be making money not only on the meat, but they'll also be making money on the animal waste now. So that's the movement that's taking place. And the industry spent all that time and money developing these digester systems. Why didn't they spend that money phasing out the Laguna spray fill system as they agreed?
Yeah, see, remember when we did that joint workshop together and I had the action alerts there on the table because the communities there wanted to fight against the approved manure, basically incineration. There's a loophole because it doesn't draw oxygen the way that they have this in the system. But it was manure to energy. And, you know, the folks there, it's an EJ community. They did not want this. And this is the only way, you know, is to go locally, stand up. It's interesting. The one community beat it. They were actually proposing this in a very populated area of town where there was like a school built with a $43 million investment by somebody, ball fields with this. They didn't not approve it.
You talking about in North Carolina?
No, I'm talking about in Delaware where Gina
okay.
is. They withdrew their application and then they came back. Then they came back into an EJ area, put the same application in. The whole community came out and said, look, you said it wasn't good over there, why here? And they approved it here. So this is why we fight and we don't believe this is renewable energy and, you know, this cannot be because it's poisoning EJ communities. We got 1 minute left.
Okay, so, and this is probably a difficult question. This is for North Carolina and Sussex. I know when your family owns land and it may be there before these industries come and all, but can I ask, is it very difficult to move or not move, but to leave? Is it my tie to the land that keeps me there, or
absolutely,
yes.
and I know it is because we had land too. But if it's compromising the health, how do y'all deal with that?
Well,
how do you deal with it?
Here's part of the problem that we have to look at. Number one, the people were there first. You're talking about generational property. You're talking about low income, fixed income, poor people can't afford to just pick up and move. Where they gonna go? If they can't sell their property, where they gonna get the money from to go elsewhere? The property has been rendered almost useless to people because of the environmental conditions that exist. Ain't nobody gonna go buy Elsie's house.
So
Mine, you saw mine in the
then I
movie,
go
right?
back to the
That's been sitting
lawyer.
there for
I go
5
back
years.
to the lawyer then, Miss Muhammad.
Do what?
I would defer to a lawyer then because the nuisance, you said the nuisance,
Okay.
the compromising the health, and how does that, that's why I said, is it,
So the
I
nuisance,
know it's difficult to leave, but
Well,
what does the
let
lawyer
me
do?
just say to you, I have no intentions of moving. I'm trying to, I'm part of this nuisance lawsuit, so that has delayed the lawyers' movement on getting my family's land back, because they got it illegally. You're not supposed to go into the registry of deeds office and manipulate the documents.
Right.
And that is what they did. That's how they came in possession of it. You weren't negligent. They just went into the registry of deeds office, they had all the right people in all the right places. They helped them manipulate those documents, take the land, and then they got the green light to come out and build that facility around my family's house.
Okay, friends, we have, Chris wanted to say something?
Yeah. So could I just ask in Delaware or Maryland, around the Delmarva poultry issues, you mentioned the case previously that was, I remember the coverage was the industry spin was you're suing a small family which is, you know, just a very convenient way to spin it.
Right.
Are there any efforts now taking a little bit of a lesson off of the nuisance lawsuits in North Carolina, which are against Smithfield, against Murphy Brown?
Yeah.
There's not. It's not. They can try to say it's against individual farmers, but it's not.
Right.
What can we get behind as researchers with some tools around new strategies
great question.
to get at the industry of big poultry?
Yeah, I mean, we should have another
Yes.
50-minute panel on that. But
Yes.
I mean, we made the Purdue case was strategically filed to get Purdue on the hook for what its integrators were doing. Right? They say they're independent contractors. They treat them like employees. They literally show up at their houses and kill their chickens for it. So to say that it's not their operation is pure fiction, right? So there was a strategic move to try and create the law that would recognize that, so that the quote unquote family farmers could not get off the hook for what they were doing on a daily basis, whether it was creating a nuisance or whether it was creating, and keep the integrators in play, right? All we wanted from the local farmer was his cooperation with the lawsuit. His lawyer, who was his cousin, first came to us and said, we need to get this resolved. Like, they do everything for him. They come in and kill his chickens. They run this thing. He'll tell you that, right? He said, great, that's all we need. We go into deposition. I depose the guy, and he says, oh, I run the whole show. You know, his lawyer gets fired, right? Purdue brings in another law firm that is deeply tied with them, and he toes their line completely, right? To the point of like ridiculous lies and garbage. And so you're right. Like, we need other strategies. I sue Synagro and I sue the local farmer. Why do I sue the local farmer? Because I don't want him to have a free pass on lying. I want to be able to sit and depose him. I want to put him under oath. But I don't care about his money. I don't care about bankrupting him. But we need to look at new strategies and to say, well, maybe the answer now is we go for Purdue, because in that case, we did get a ruling from that judge, as unfavorable as that judge was, that Purdue was responsible for what was happening at this farm. So we did achieve that, and there were probably some other wins, but that was a big one. And so now we can just go for Purdue. Before that, the argument was these are independent contractors, we don't control them, it's not our problem, right? It's their waste, and they feed them, they provide the feed, they provide the chickens, they pull the chickens away, they kill the chickens, but yet the poop that comes out is not their problem, right? It's crazy. And the ammonia that comes out.
It becomes economic.
But there's a lot of discussion that we should have.
Guys, anyone, we're at the end of the session, and I think now it's lunch? It is lunch. There are fact sheets here about some stuff with the Maryland, the Eastern Shore, with the CAFOs and the waste, and a farm to table. You have to support the local farms if we want to end the system. We're doing a farm to table dinner in Berlin. Cards are up here if you want to sign for an email list, please do. Thank you, everyone. We appreciate you coming out.